It's that time again for another walk and more goofy reviews of random ass horror movies that I spend my time with. This week I've actually got a quartet for you because I had a nice, pretty quiet weekend for once. No events to do for any of my adult responsibilities, less people at my house than normal. So I really just kind of laid it on and really just watched as much as I could. And as usual, I kind of had a little bit of a theme that ran between the movies. Most of this one was kind of very heavy on location, although the first one breaks with that a little because it's faking the locations. But it was a fairly solid night of some pretty good movies. I think you might actually learn about some that you may not even know of tonight. But we start off naturally with like a bigger title because I usually do for the main feature, and so the first one of the night was Lee Cronin's The Mummy, which admittedly I was not crazy excited about seeing it come into theaters. And it's not that I'm precious about The Mummy or anything. I've always found mummy subgenre kind of a tricky thing because I like mummies as an idea, but the number of actual good mummy movies is remarkably slim. And it's kind of sad because really nothing has ever topped the Hammer horror mummy from, what was that, the early 60s, I think was that one? May have been late 60s, but still, it's been a long time, and nothing has ever topped that one. I know most people are, very precious about the Brendan Fraser movies. I'm going to admit a weakness for the Tom Cruise one. You can come after me all you want. But, so this new one, I wasn't terribly excited about it because of the director. And I found it a little bit ridiculous that he had his name attached to it. That, it's Lee Cronin's, it's like Tyler Perry's The Mummy or something. But, and his previous film, which got a pretty good response overall from most people, I hated. He made Evil Dead Rise, which it got a bizarrely good response. I do not know why. But although problematically, I couldn't really tell you what I hate about it. It proved so unmemorable that I really couldn't, give it a teardown without actually going back and reviewing it. So, kind of, seeing him coming up and doing a mummy movie that kind of looked like he was doing some of the same old tricks from Evil Dead, just like, oh, this might suck. But I will say, despite a myriad of issues, it was a better than average mummy movie. And so it's one I would actually recommend to a decent subset of people, though I won't recommend it to everyone, though, but we'll come back to why. Let's go this way. So, the plot line for this one starts off in Egypt. There's a young family. The dad's a reporter. Mom is apparently a nurse. Got 2 kids. She's pregnant with a third. And you just kind of get used to, you see some of their lifestyle and all that. Although this is actually after the little the little teaser at the beginning that involves a different family that has some creepy black pyramid under their house and a corpse that they have to keep an eye on. You don't get a ton of answers from that portion, but you come back to it. But so you have this young family, and they're living in Egypt, and one day the daughter gets taken. Strange woman that we as the audience have actually already seen comes and takes her. And it jumps to 8 years later. They're living back in America now. They live in New Mexico. So that way they can still kind of keep the desert aesthetic. Plus, I think the whole movie was filmed in Spain. So regardless of whether it's the Egyptian portions or the American portions, it's all just Spain. But, it does kind of help to give the movie a look. They come back they're living their lives still. You know, the one boy is grown up. You know, the kid that they were pregnant for, she's, you know, like 8 or something by this point. Well, yeah, so you used to be like 7, 8. And over in Egypt, there is a plane crash. And part of this plane crash is this freaky black sarcophagus that has their daughter. Whoa. Huh. I don't know if you guys caught that shooting star. Yeah, I made the wish. I ain't telling you. So, oh god, I lost my train of thought here. Yeah, this is this freaky black sarcophagus. Their daughter's in it. She's still alive somehow. So this, you know, then ends up with them bringing her home. You know, she's kind of like locked in more ways than one. She's kind of deformed from years without sunlight, malnutrition, all that sort of stuff. Basically rotting away. Can't speak, any of that. And as things start to progress, well, so in this case, she is the mummy. And she's got some hoodoo going on with her, which starts to infect the family and spread evil as it goes. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, a detective who worked on the case when the girl originally went missing is trying to figure out still, like, what happened to her. How, you know, where did it go from when she disappeared to her ending up in the sarcophagus? That way they kind of throw in a little bit of a procedural aspect to the movie. And this is kind of... That two-portion thing for the story is actually pretty good, because you get a break, the pacing gets to mix up as you go. The problem with it is Lee Cronin, his script, he spends way too much time on a little bit of everything. And so the movie is like 2 hours and 14 minutes with credits. So, I mean, without them, it's probably like 2:07 maybe. But it's too long for what it is. Because you don't get enough, like, good character development or, you know, dramatic beats or things like that, or even, like, action sequences or something to break it up. It's a pretty morose and very gory movie, which I appreciate the gore. But because of that, as an audience member, you kind of run out of steam well before the movie's done. You know, if it had been 100 minutes maybe, wouldn't have been such an issue. And I think he easily could have trimmed it down to that and not really risked losing the plot or anything too important. Especially if just a couple of plot points had been rewritten or something like that. But going back to it being gory, though, I appreciate that, because, I mean, my two favorite eras for horror movies largely are the 80s and the early aughts, both known for lots of gore. And so, you know, I don't mind it, but kind of like with his Evil Dead movie, Cronin kind of mistakes being gross with being scary. And I can't really say, like... I mean, I'm sure there's somebody who must find this movie frightening, because I've known some people who are just, you know, absolute weenies. But, yeah, it's not like, you know, when I watched Body Snatchers, a week or two ago, you know, that I could see the scare factor for someone. This, I really couldn't, unless just the notion of what's going on got to you that much. But, you know, it will gross you out, though, because even me, there was a part, weird little detail about me, I hate nail clippers, and there's a bit involving nail clippers, and just, you know, ew. This kind of adds to, like, yeah, this is why I don't want to use those things. They're clearly evil. But as for, like, the cast and crew and things like that, most everybody in it is fairly early in their career, kind of unknown. The person I knew best from the whole cast is the detective. It took me a little bit to figure out. She's I think her name's May Callumway. She was in Moon Knight. So yeah, that's like as big a star power as you get, and that's not a problem. Most people do a decent job in it. But yeah, like I said, it's not particularly scary. It is too long. And it does kind of, as sort of feared, he does sort of repeat the Evil Dead tricks. Like, even though it's a mummy movie, it's basically like, kind of like a lighter Evil Dead movie with some mummy trappings. Which is kind of a problem, but at the same time, it does help to create a unique mummy film. Because, you're not doing the usual thing. So like I said, it is better than average for that subgenre. And that's largely because it makes that different choice. Instead of being an action-adventure movie, or a big-budget summer flick, or sort of a period piece, Hammer thing or something like that. It just, it takes more of like a demonic possession, gross-out movie bent to mummy stories. So, it is fairly unique. But, like I said, if you're someone who really does not care for gore and really does not want 2 hours of largely miserable happenings, it's gonna get to you. It's gonna just kind of wear you down, and you're probably not gonna have the best time. But I don't think it's a bad movie. I could see myself adding it to my collection, revisiting it every, few years maybe. It would never be like key rotation. It would never be something like you watch every Halloween marathon. But that's something you could go back to every so often when you're like, yeah, I want a weird mix of things. So, yeah, so I was actually kind of impressed. I hope that Cronin kind of, on his next project, whatever it is, he's being rumored to be possibly putting together a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I hope he kind of steps back, comes up with some new tricks, figures out, like I said, gore isn't scary unto itself, and that, you can do some other stuff. But yeah, having seen this one, I feel like, okay, this guy does have some potential now, whereas Evil Dead Rise just made me think like, okay, he's a moron and he needs to go. So for me, I found it an improvement on his work. I think it's a unique enough movie, pretty decent. After that one, I moved on to, it was actually a revisit. It's a movie I've seen once before, but kind of like a lot of my revisits lately, it's because I ended up with an upgrade. So, because I finally did, I thought of doing the Vinegar Syndrome subscription for years for their releases. This year I finally had enough cash, I decided to do that. The trick is, though, a lot of stuff I've gotten is, it's upgrades. It's kind of nice because it's usually stuff that I only had at best on DVD. So, it's jumping all the way up to a 4K. You're not going to complain too much, depending on the movie. When they gave me a 4K at the Mangler, I wasn't terribly pleased about that. But getting upgrades to things like Mutant and stuff like that, it's been pretty fun, been worthwhile. In my last package, there was Night School. And, like a lot of those other ones, I have an older DVD of it. And it is a early 80s, I think it might be 81, maybe. They classify it as a slasher flick. It's actually got a lot more in common with, like, the giallo stuff from very popular in Italy and Spain. And that, it's a murder mystery and a horror movie, but it has kind of that detective crime story element to it. And that it's violent, but it's not terribly obsessed with the gore or showing all the violence. So like, if you're looking for a straight slasher flick where they usually have like the creative kills and come up with interesting ways and entertaining ways to kill people off, it's not that kind of movie. The plot line of it is early 80s Boston. There is a serial killer going around dressed in like a leather motorcycle outfit, black motorcycle helmet. They've got like a kukri knife, and they keep killing women, chopping off their heads, and putting said heads in bodies of water. Maybe it's a bucket, a sink, an aquarium, what have you. But they're always finding some sort of water container to put the head in. Main character, well, asterisk main character, because it's one of those movies that kind of jumps perspectives every so often, but for the majority of it, our main character is the detective looking into the case. Oh, he's trying to figure out what's going on. Who is the killer? The only starting piece of evidence he has is that the victims all trace back to a women's, like, I don't know if you call it like a community college or just like, or it is a college, but it has, they're all kind of like in the same class, and it's, night school, so it's thus the title. So as the movie rolls along, you get to know their professor. He's kind of another main character, his main girlfriend, because he cheats around a lot. And there's just lots of little fun side bits in there too, like the superintendent of the school is this pervy older lady who she gets after the professor because he's constantly having affairs with the students, but then she too is trying to seduce his students. It's nice, trashy, fun. But yeah, it's a very basic storyline. But it's a really entertaining movie. It stopped shy of greatness, and from what I can tell, like when it came out, it was not very well liked. And I suppose it kind of makes sense. You think like early 80s, you're in the pit of the slasher flick emergence. Everybody's still copying off of Halloween. The Friday the 13th series has started. You got things like Dorm That Dripped Blood and The Burning. Well, actually, The Burning might have been around that time, yeah. So yeah, I can imagine being tired of it as a reviewer at the time. But for that era, it's a pretty entertaining one. Like I said, it doesn't have the creative kills of most slasher flicks, so if you're in for that, you're not going to get it. It's more of just a decent, spooky, killer mystery movie. And it was actually the last movie from the director. Oh crap, I've forgotten his name now, but he's the same guy that directed Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, so yeah, do with that what you will. Yeah, I'm kind of struggling to find a lot to say about it, because like I said, it doesn't have much storyline-wise, but it's got, a decent presentation. The music is done by Brad Fiedel, who's most popular for The Terminator. And, it has his very kind of wonky, electronic-infused, early 80s synth soundtrack stuff. And one of the biggest advantages it has, though, is the location. So like I said, it's based in Boston, and it is filmed almost 100% in Boston. On location, on the streets, in houses, in businesses, in the early 80s. It looks fantastic. It really takes you back to a time and place, which is something I miss a lot. Because a lot of newer horror movies, they either just kind of base them in a generic space, or they aim for nostalgia, or even it's just that they're filming on set because they can't afford, location shooting or whatever. You don't get a lot of, location-based personality, from new horror movies. And so getting that from this, seeing early 80s Boston, is very entertaining. So it's kind of got this tourism aspect to it as well. And I will give the movie points as well. The ending, because most of the movies we've talked about in the past few weeks have had pretty lousy endings. At best, most of them just have okay-ish ones, like The Mummy earlier tonight has an okay ending. It's just you're exhausted by the time you get there. But yeah, Night School actually has a really entertaining ending. There's a twist you may or may not see coming, but then the last couple of scenes after that kind of make up for it, and it's an entertaining movie. So for kind of slasher flick fans, depending on what they're after, it may or may not scratch your itch. if you're kind of like a giallo lover, you'll probably really dig it. But yeah, for most people, you're gonna have a fairly decent time watching the movie. It's entertaining. It's well made. It's got a great atmosphere and everything. Here, I'm gonna speed up so I don't get hit by the Burger King folks. And so, yeah, so I would recommend that one too. But yeah, it's not an all-timer. It's not some great lost gem, but that's a decent enough flick. And then after that one, I moved on to something far, far different. It was a new pickup for me. It was also a Vinegar Syndrome release under their Labs line, where they kind of pick stuff that's either a different genre or kind of older or foreign, doesn't fit their usual release mold. And so it's a movie called The Hand of Night. It's late 60s British flick, directed by a guy called, I think, Frederick Good. As far as I can tell, I've never seen a movie from him. His filmography was completely alien to me. But you got something that's stretching back to like the late 60s British horror era. I'm a big fan of, because a lot of those have great atmosphere. They don't always have the best pacing and storytelling, unfortunately, but man, I'm a sucker for atmosphere. And this one has kind of an odd cast too. Like, the main actor is William Sylvester, who I know I've seen in stuff. Because I even know, like, he's in 2001: A Space Odyssey. So there's stuff I've seen him in, but I wouldn't, like, I can't think of what roles he is. He's just kind of one of those guys. And even a lot of the other cast is like that. Sort of main love interest. I know I've seen her in stuff. I think some different Hammer movies. Couldn't peg her for anything specific. The guy that plays kind of like her father-in-law, same thing. But the storyline of this one is a man who he survived a car wreck, and he survived it by just rolling out of the car. But the car wreck killed his wife and his 2 children, and he's kind of an emotional wreck from this. He kind of believes that, like, he's kind of lost in this thing of, like, either he cheated death or he was cheated by death, because he should be dead with his family. So he's a real mope, not a huge ray of sunshine. And he's actually traveling to Morocco to see a doctor. And on the way, he meets an older gentleman who takes kind of a severe interest in him because of his, like, violent dream that he has on the plane. So eventually he goes to a party hosted by that guy, meets that guy's assistant, and starts to get roped into some of their work. They're archaeologists looking into this old tomb nearby. But you get into a lot of weird metaphysical shit. So basically, the tone of the movie, it's kind of a vampire movie. And I mean kind of in a very, very vague sense. Our guy, since he's so despondent, he's kind of gotten in touch a little bit with, like, the dark side of existence. And thus, he's open to that, and it kind of starts calling to him. So he ends up meeting some of these strange figures, like, trying to remember the name of there's kind of like an Arab beggar. Well, I say Arab, like, he's just sort of, even though it's Morocco, you just kind of get sort of a more generic foreign beggar guy vibe off of him. And he kind of speaks in riddles and ends up leading the guy to this castle where he meets Marissa, who may or may not be this ancient princess who, like, put out a curse that she was gonna, one day rule over mankind. But it's got this kind of weird thing of being a 60s movie. It has elements of that, like, fun house horror aesthetic. But at the same time, it's kind of artsy, and having the storyline be very much trauma based, and this guy's, how his reality is altered based on his trauma. This would be something that would actually kind of usually be more in line with a lot of crap that people are into right now. And the sort of dream quality it has to it, I would almost attribute more with like almost like a David Lynch movie. It's not quite that far gone, but in that wheelhouse, let's say. And initially I was actually really into it. I want to go that way, but I imagine you guys will not be able to see squat if I do. So let's try this path instead. Initially, I was really into the movie. I was kind of hoping that, like, man, I'm onto something with this one. And that was despite the fact its reputation is bad. Like, you look it up, the reputation when it came out, and the reputation ever since. It's not a well-liked movie. And as I watch it, I kind of get it. It's very poorly paced. It's sort of a mood piece. It's not bad, but it's not going to get your pulse rate up really at any particular point. And tying into that, the conclusion for it was pretty limp. And I mean, like, in the sense, I'm not even really sure what they meant. Like, the character's sort of arc and his goal and what he's doing just kind of jumps around and doesn't really finish. Or at least it finishes, but in a way that doesn't seem to totally make sense. So, I can see then why the lesser response to it. But I did really have a decent time with it. And it kind of like with Night School, part of it was the setting. So, it takes place in Morocco, and the vast majority of it is filmed in Morocco. And that looks so cool. Like, seeing late 60s Morocco and some remarkably good wide photography too. It's a refreshing kind of location. It looks different. It feels different than a lot of what you usually see for horror movies, and especially for kind of a vampire movie. So that did it a lot of favors. Unfortunately, though, like I said, the pacing is off. Dialogue's very heavy-handed, and you don't really get a huge feeling of a threat throughout the film. So it's kind of vampires, but you don't have people getting their blood sucked out. They're very lackadaisical. It's more like they're just trying to win you over to their side. Someone nearly gets burned to death in the desert, stuff like that, but it's just not very scary. They're very much earthly enemies. They don't cast spells on you. They don't appear out of fog generally. Marissa, as the head, she has a few extra talents, but she's nothing too special, nothing too magical. Yeah, so it's that hard thing to do, because near the start of it, I'm like, yeah, this movie's awesome. I want to tell everybody to watch this. And by the end, I was kind of like, all right, maybe not. Kind of like some of the other stuff from that night. If you really like 60s horror and you want something a little more artistic, it's a pretty good thing to watch. But yeah, just don't expect a life changer, unfortunately. But, entertaining enough. But yeah, I think for most people near like the middle portion, yeah, you'll dip. You'll check your phone or something. It'll happen. And yeah, it's unfortunate for what is otherwise a pretty cool movie. So after that, I think I took a little walk. Got a little blood flow to the legs, because you need that every so often. And when I came back, I had no idea what to watch. I think I mentioned to you guys, my watch pile is massive at the moment. And given my weird I'm thinking, employment history this year. Yeah, so there's been some Saturdays where I haven't gotten as many movies in as I'd like. So, there's this giant pile and I'm looking at it, and I went back to kind of another revisit. This one I did not own, even though I'd seen it before, is Macabre. Early 80s Italian movie, Lamberto Bava's first solo flick. And this is kind of a fun one. It's a hard one because based on its opening 10 minutes and ending 20 minutes, I'd love to call it like an all-timer. But unfortunately there's everything in between that. And so, we'll get into it. So the plot line of this one, it's New Orleans, early 80s. There's a woman who she'd married, 2 kids, but she has a lover on the side. One day she's supposed to take her kids to the theater, but she just skips out on them, goes to see her man. And while she's over there at his place, something happens back home. I won't spoil what, because that's very entertaining unto itself. They're rushing back to her place in the car and get in an accident, which, kills her lover. So, flash to a year later, she's separated from her husband. She's been up to some stuff. They try to say some of it for a surprise, though I'm not really sure why, because you can kind of put together what she's been doing. But she goes back to the house that her lover rented a room in and kind of takes up living there. She's paying her landlord is a blind man who fixes saxophones and things like that, who is also very, very, very attached to her. He's very, he'd really like to be her man. And we'll go this way. And so he takes her in. He routinely tries to make, little passes there, tries to get her to have dinner with him and things like that. But she's constantly breaking off. She goes up to her apartment, she locks the door, and he routinely hears her in the throes of ecstasy. Sometimes even calling out her dead lover's name. And so the majority of the movie is unfortunately just this section where, I think his name is David, is the blind man. He tries to win her over. She, knocks him down. Sometimes she almost gives in, but then she'll knock him down again as if she remembers something. And then she'll go do weird stuff. And you also have a continuing storyline involving her daughter, who is up to some shenanigans. She's a little asshole. She's kind of like one of the supreme, movie little asshole kids. But yeah, the majority of the movie is just, people being kind of miserable and weird in a big old house in New Orleans. Thus, it gets more than a little bit tiresome, especially if you know some of the tricks of the movie. Which, the first time I saw it, I unfortunately did. Many people do. If you don't, it'll probably be a little bit more entertaining because you'll be guessing. Now, in the last 20 minutes or so, they get into revealing what's going on. Movie gets a whole lot more entertaining. Both kind of stuff with the mom and the daughter kind of come to a head. It just gets much, much more entertaining. And thankfully, even for somebody like me who knew the primary twist of the film, there's still one extra twist right at the end that I did not know about and that I absolutely adore. It is goofy, but I'm a fan of it. And yeah, it's one of those things I don't want to spoil. But I think it's just so much fun in, like I said, its opening and ending. And much like the previous two movies I'd watched that night, it has the advantage that even though a lot of it takes place in the house, which I'm pretty certain the house is in Italy, they did get a lot of outdoor, on location New Orleans footage. So you also get a really good location, really good time and place, and that is points. That really is it. I never thought we'd reach the point in movies where that would count so much, but you have so many movies now that like don't look like they take place anywhere at any time. So having something like that, it gets you points now. And yeah, for fans of Italian horror movies, if you've never seen it, yeah, then you gotta watch Macabre. For more normal folks, though, yeah, I could never. That's why I could never call it like an all-timer, because there's just too much empty space in it, which is unfortunate. But that was that whole night's shebang there. And like I said, all entertaining in their own right. All had something to offer. No, once again, no all-timers to add to the list. Though I think the stuff I'm going to watch this weekend, I think we will be adding to that again. But we'll get there. And since I've still got a few more minutes before I get back to my starting point, let's talk about a couple of non-horror things I viewed or attempted to view. One was a couple of nights earlier, out of boredom. Me and my niece, we were kind of scrolling around Pluto and Tubi and stuff. And on Pluto, we came across the fourth Expendables movie, which neither of us have seen. And, has a... If you've heard anything about it, you may know it has a horrible reputation, even amongst that series. Which is pretty impressive, because they're not, they're not well-regarded high-class films. My stance on in general, like, the first one is an okay-ish action movie. It does not accomplish the premise of being, like the action star super crossover it was supposed to be. It's basically just a buddy action movie between Stallone and Jason Statham. Whereas the second one actually kind of accomplished the goal. It actually almost was that super crossover of action heavyweights. And then the third one is just an abomination. Though I feel so much better about the third one after attempting the fourth one. I say attempt because we did not finish. We made it about halfway through and turned it off. We were going to come back. But it was just like, no, we can't do this all at once. It's too bad. Unfortunately, by the time we went back, it had changed over to August. It's no longer on Pluto, and you have to pay like $4 or $5 to watch it. And I am not paying money to finish that. Because it is the rare thing that it's a single movie that you could almost run a film class off of. Strictly because everything in it is wrong. Every single thing in it is wrong. The editing, the timing, the dialogue, the sound editing, the special effects. Even my brother didn't believe me. The length of time that the title screen is on is somehow wrong. Like it cuts awkwardly where it's like it comes up a little bit too early and then leaves too early. Which, it's hard to explain because obviously you need to see it in person. But yeah, every single thing in the movie is completely wrong. Which is impressive, but it's not like a so bad it's good kind of way. It's just bad. And so that was a little experience unto itself. We kind of made up for it because my niece is a very big Jason Statham fan, despite the quality of his films. So a few days later, we did watch The One on Tubi, which I hadn't seen in a very long time. It's not a good movie, but it still has like one of my favorite I'd say it's a bad movie ending, but I just love the ending on that stupid thing. And we've actually made it into a cell phone message alert around the house now. For those who've seen the ending of the one, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. If not, I'd challenge more of you to watch it just so you could experience that ending. And then outside of those movies, naturally, like a lot of people, I went to watch Spider-Man. I did that last Thursday after doing some work. Managed to get in at the local theater down here. And I was, like a lot of Marvel movies, it's a lot to take in at once. I don't think many people kind of cover the fact that, like, their movies usually play better the second time you watch them. You know, once you know what everything is and where everything's going and how this all fits together. Because usually on that first viewing, it's just a lot to take in. And this one's no different. But it was, you know, it is a remarkably good movie. It's very well paced most of the time. The most important thing to me, though, is that it's actually about something that kind of matters in this day and age, and that it's about kind of the loneliness epidemic and people's need to kind of reach out and connect with each other more. And that is across the board with where Peter Parker's at, with where the villain of the story is at, and where a lot of the other characters are, because that's, you have people like the Punisher in there who is, always separate from other people. Yeah, and it creates a very interesting dynamic for the film. And, so I hope more people kind of pick up on that, because you see some folks who will just naturally give it a bad review. They think it's a Marvel movie, it's an advertisement for products and future projects. And they're kind of tearing down the fact, like, no, this has got a good message for kind of everybody, that, like, hey, we need to try a little harder to, take care of each other and enjoy life and not be quite so miserable. I mean, I think that's a good message, at least, but maybe I'm old-fashioned. But yeah, it had some really good stuff in it. Like any of these movies, there's stuff that doesn't quite work. There's some action beats that are a bit sloppy. Wire work is a little goofy. There's the occasional special effects shot that isn't the best. It's par for the course on that front. Those are things that always happen. But yeah, as a big, summer blockbuster, it has some real emotional weight. It has some real dramatic chops to it. It's a good movie. And so it's one of those ones where, be cynical as people might about it, just zooming up the charts. I think right now it's the second fastest movie to ever earn $1 million, and I think probably by tomorrow it's probably going to be the most successful movie of the year. But it's like, yeah, that's good, because it's a good movie about good ideas and good things with good actors. And kind of like a lot of the horror movies I mentioned, it actually kind of feels on occasion like something from here and now. Because even though a lot of the movie is filmed in Canada, some of it's filmed in Scotland and stuff, they do a good enough job aping the look of New York. And then the end credits, especially the end credits, are done entirely in New York. And you may find this weird, but yeah, one of the best end credit sequences I think I've ever seen. Because it's just people having, enjoying their lives in New York with current music. It's not just baby boomers' favorites. And so yeah, it's something of the here and now. Yeah, and it was kind of remarkably nice to see that. And so that's one I definitely want to go back to and review again. Because like I said, almost any of them, they play better second, third time you go at them. But yeah, I mean, I don't really need to recommend it, though, to anybody, do I? Because the box office is an indication you've probably seen it. But yeah, that has been my fairly busy haul of viewing for the past few days. Actually, technically, I've viewed more than that, too, because I watched Rumble in the Bronx again for the first time in its international cut. But we've talked about enough stuff for tonight. And so, as always, I thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the walk. I hope I'm getting better at this. But yeah, so if you have any recommendations, have any comments, you know where all the stuff is. Everyone knows how to use YouTube by this point. So you have a good night. Thanks for joining me.